Momentum doesn't arrive loud. It builds in the quiet places, in stones that stop drifting wide, in lines that finally hold, in small choices that start stacking into something real. One clean end turns into another. A tight finish becomes rhythm. A season that once felt slippery begins to feel grounded. Sudbury isn't winning with flash. They're winning with control. And control changes everything. Because control gives you space. Space to breathe. Space to notice. Space for what's been building underneath the game to finally surface. And when momentum settles in, nothing stays hidden for long. This is Clean Takeout, Chapter 6, Holding the Line. Morning arrives in layers of sound and motion, voices low with sleep, and nerves and the quiet focus. The team drifts towards the rink together, bodies falling into a familiar rhythm. Everywhere Nate turns, Jonah is already there, a glance catching at the end of the hall, shoulders brushing as they funnel through narrow doorways. By the entrance, a bench holds water bottles in a loose row. Nate reaches. Jonah reaches. Their hands pause inches apart. They both pull back. Nate lifts his eyes. Jonah is watching him gaze steady. The tension moved through them like a current under frozen water. Evan watches them with open suspicion. Cal watches with steadier eyes. No one speaks, yet the air has changed. And once cold settles in, the body always knows. Provincials doesn't unfold in a single moment. It stretches, games stack one after another, ice never fully resting between them. The building humming constantly with movement and sound. Nate leads them onto the ice each time, posture steady. Jonah glides into position beside him, shoulders loose, eyes sharp, already reading the sheet like it's speaking directly to him. Evan bounces in place, cracking his knuckles, shaking out his arms, and Cal is there with them. He crouches low beside Evan, palm brushing the pebble, reading speed. The first wind settles clean, a few tight ends, a final stone that holds. Evan throws both fists into the air. Cal is already there, gloved hand landing hard against Evan's shoulder, the other gripping Jonah's arm. The next game carries more weight. Evan is first on the broom when a stone runs hot, pushing hard through the frost. When a draw sticks where it should, Evan pumps his fist again. Like he's trying to show momentum forward with his body, Cal sweeps past him, shoulder bumping once. Jonah drops a guard that forces the other team wide. From the skip end, Nate watches calmly, eyes never leaving Jonah's line. Jonah feels the focus like pressure at his back. The building slowly begins to shift. Sudbury keeps moving forward. Momentum simply arrives and stays. By the time the provincial final comes into view, it feels less like a match and more like everything tightening toward one point. Wind stacked behind them, pressure waiting ahead. Momentum feels good. Too good to question yet. Teams crowd the tables. Laughter rises and collapses quickly, like everyone is talking just to keep their nerves from speaking louder. Nate spreads the bracket sheet out. His eyes move steadily down the columns, mapping the path. Jonah slides in beside him. Their shoulders touch. Across from them, Evan drops into chair and immediately starts shaking one leg hard enough to rattle the table. Cal stands behind Nate, coffee in hand, scanning the room the way he scans a house cluttered with stones. Evan's leg keeps bouncing. Jonah reaches across and presses his palm down lightly. Stop, Jonah murmurs. Every time I stop moving before a big game, we lose. Jonah keeps his hand there. Trust it. Evan exhales through his nose and nods. Jonah's hands lift and shifts, almost without thought. It lands on Nate's thigh instead. Nate goes still. The pen pauses mid-mark. For a split second, the cafeteria dissolves. He is standing in another rink. After practice, the locker room air is heavy with steam. Towels hang low on hips. A hand rests on his thigh. The guy beside him is laughing at something Nate said, leaning in closer than necessary, breast brushing his jaw. They have been like this for weeks. Quiet glances across the sheet. Late messages. a hand lingering too long in the hallway. It has felt like a secret shared between equals. Nate leans in without thinking. Then a voice cut through. Laughter follows, sharp and rising. Heads turn. Someone stepped closer, eyes narrowing. What the fuck you doing, faggot? The hand on Nate's thigh disappears instantly, already putting space between them. A guy by the locker yanks his underwear up quickly. Another snatches a towel from the bench and wraps it tight around his waist. The guy who had been touching him grabs his towel and turns away, speaking to someone else like nothing happened. A coach appears in the doorway minutes later, drawn by the noise. The memory folds in on itself, and Cal's hand presses firmly against the back of Nate's chair. Focus, he says quietly. The cafeteria rushes back in. Across the table, Evan exhales loudly. Hey, he says, pointing at both of them. No flirting before the game. Bad energy, dudes. Keep your hands where I can see. Jonah snorts, lifts his hand. Cal straightens. They all gather over the sheet again. But something inside Nate has shifted. When the moment surfaces in open light, it doesn't swallow him whole. It stays small. It stays contained. And that difference feels almost unbelievable. Only one sheet remains lit. Every other game has finished. Gearbags rolls away down hallways. Voices fade. Sudbury gathers at the edge. They're down just enough to keep the building relaxed. Just enough to let North Space settle into confidence. 4 bodies close. Breasts visible. Nothing to lose, Cal says low. Evan nods hard. Jonah's eyes lift to Nate. Nate meets the look. Hands stack quickly between them. A firm squeeze. The circle breaks. Sudbury moves onto the ice as one. Nate settles at the skip end, broom resting lightly in his grip. Shoulders square, weight grounded. Jonah eases into the hack, rolling tension from his neck before stilling. Evan paces once, then plants his feet. Jaw set. Cal takes his place with them. Nate's focus stays locked down the sheet. Jonah glances up. Their eyes catch. Nate lifts his broom and points. The call lands clean. Everything else blurs. Line and weight take over. The shift begins quietly. A stone holds its line instead of drifting wide. A sweep lands in rhythm. A call from Nate closes off an opening. Sudbury starts taking space across the sheet. North Space skip grows impatient. Calls come faster. Weight runs heavy. Then it comes down to one last shot. Final end. One opponent's rock sitting dangerously near the button. Cal raises his broom. Nate sets in the hack. Shoulders square. Breast controlled. Hands sure on the handle. He pushes. The stone leaps clean. Sliding into the lane Cal carved through the air. Jonah and Evan spring forward together. Sweeping hard. Boots digging. Broom hissing in tight rhythm. The rock runs true. At the last second, it kisses the opponent's stone. The other rocks spin out. Nate's stone holds center. For a heartbeat, the rink has to catch up to what just happened. Then the building breaks open. Evan whoops loud enough to shake the rafters. Jonah slams his broom down once, laughing like he can't help it. Cal lunges forward from the house, grabbing Nate by the shoulder as he comes in. The 4 of them crash together, arms locking around back and shoulder. And when Nate lifts his head, Jonah's eyes are already on him. Momentum doesn't feel like luck anymore. It feels like something earned. The season moves forward with them. Flashes pop in uneven bursts. Voices call names. Medals are pressed into palms. Evan grins so hard it hurts. Cal stands stiff at first, then finally smiles. It's the first provincial title for Evan and Cal. For Nate and Jonah, it feels like something remembered. Come on, Evan says, jogging toward the boards. I want to see the ice again. Cal follows slower, shaking his head. Nate and Jonah trails behind. They drop onto the bench in a loose line. For a second, no one speaks. The sheet stretches bright in front of them, scarred from the final end. Evan slings an arm over Cal's shoulder. Cal hesitates half a beat, then pulls him in. Jonah's arm slides behind Nate's back. Resting across his shoulder without thinking, Nate let it stay. They look out at what they just claimed, the place where momentum turned. Holy hell, Evan whispers. Kel lets out a low laugh. We did that. Nate nods once. Jonah's grip tightens briefly. For a moment, it's only pride, only relief, only them. Then the energy shifts. Jonah eases closer, shoulder brushing Nate's again. Nationals are going to be faster ice. Evan glances over. All right, you guys can kiss now. We just won. Jonah blinks, then shoves him. Shut up. Evan laughs, stumbling back. What? I'm being supportive. Cal snorts. Nate's mouth twitches before he can stop it. Say one more word, Nate says, pointing, and I'm sweeping you into the boards. The tension breaks into laughter. Evan bounces on his toes again. Last one to the locker room buys victory dinner. You're impossible, Cal says, shaking his head. Evan takes off. Cal follows, slower but smiling. Nate and Jonah go after them, still close, still warm with the afterglow of the win. Evan bends forward with his hands on his knees, laughing between gulps of air. Cal exhales slowly, rolling his shoulder as his breathing settles. Nate straightens, chest rising and falling steady. Across from him, Jonah is still catching his breath. Evan grabs his water bottle and drinks fast, water spilling down his chin. Cal checks his phone, then steps toward the far corner, lowering his voice as he answers a call. Fabric lifts over Nate's head, damp jersey sliding free before he folds it and sets it down. Jonah mirrors him across the aisle. His eyes trace Nate's chest for a brief second, before lifting again. Nate catches it, doesn't move, and suddenly the room isn't this locker room. It's another one. Finn is across from him, tugging his shirt free, skin still warm from the ice. His eyes linger. Stop staring, Finn snaps. Nate blinks. What? Finn grabs a towel, wrapping it tight around his waist. Don't look at me like that. Confusion twists through Nate's chest. I thought we were. Finn laughs. Together? Hell no. The words land heavy. You used me. Finn scoffs. You got nothing to use. Nate shoves him. Finn shoves back harder, shoulder slamming him into the locker. Get over it. Finn snaps. You're not special. You're not even a good fuck. The room goes cold. A hand closes gently around Nate's forearm. Nate, Jonah says softly. The name cuts through the memory like light. Nate blinks. The locker shifts back into place. Jonah is standing close now, giving his arm a small tug. Evan glances up, catches the moment. Cal continues his call. The locker room settles. And this time, Nate doesn't feel alone. Eyes up. Evan's voice cuts through the steam as he enters the shower. You two planning nothing weird, right? Promise to be normal for next 5 minutes. He drops the towel as he says it. Water blasts on a second later. Nate lets out a breath that lands halfway between a laugh and relief. Jonah shakes his head, mouth curling despite himself. Steam swells. A moment later, the door opens. Cal steps in. Evan glances over. Jonah catches it. Eyes up, Evan. Jonah calls lightly through the spray. Evan grins and swings a quick punch into Jonah's arm. Jonah yelps, then shoves him back just as hard. Laughter echoes against tile. Dinner runs long. Plates are pushed aside. Evan announces, already lifting a hand for the server. Cal reaches out gently, presses Evan's wrist back down. Easy. We got early flight tomorrow. Evan groans, like he has been personally betrayed. We just won provincials. The server arrives. Cal lifts his glass. Water, please. Evan protests. Cal doesn't budge. Nate lobs quietly into his drink. Jonah shakes his head. They head toward the door together. Evan already talking too loud about the final shot. Cal watches them go. Then he turns back to Nate. Walk with me. Cold air wraps around them the moment they step away from the diner. The noise fades fast out here. Cal leans against the low railing near the sidewalk, rubbing his hands together once before stilling. Good win, Cal says. You kept everyone steady. Nate nods. The whole team was locked in. Cal stares across the lot for a moment, jaw set like he's lining something up in his head. I got an offer. Club out west. Higher circuit. Cal lets the word sit. Full time. Better program. More resources. Nate's eyebrow lifts slightly. That's big. Silence stretches between them. You've already been doing half my job, Cal says quietly. Nate looks at him. You read people. Nate lets out a small breath. I just skip. You lead, Cal corrects. If I take this offer, I want you handling the team. The weight lands heavy and real. You're ready, Cal continues. You've been ready longer than you think. It's yours if you want it. Nate swallows. You asking or telling? Cal smiles faintly. Asking. Nate looks back toward the diner's warm windows, then back at Cal. You should take the job. He offers his hand. Cal grips it firm. Proud of you. Cal heads towards a hotel entrance. Nate watches him go. The wind settles hums in his chest, and beneath it comes that old fear again. Every time something good reaches this point, something always left. Nate draws in a slow breath, watching it cloud the air and disappear. The future feels closer than it did this morning. And somehow, more fragile too. Evan drops onto the bed, mattress bouncing once before settling. Jonah sits across from him. Evan shifts, fingers rubbing together like he's working up nerve. You like Nate? He blurts. Jonah's smile fades. He doesn't answer right away. Evan props himself up on his elbows, watching him. Jonah exhales slowly through his nose. I think about him. Evan nods, absorbing it. So you're actually into him. Jonah doesn't correct him. Evan chews on that. Is it always like that? He asks. Bro, just say it. What's on your mind? Evan hesitates, then nods. So, he starts carefully. How does it work? Jonah arches a brow. Are you usually... He cuts himself off, groaning. Shit. Forget I said that. That was stupid. Jonah lifts his head, eyes sharpening slightly. Are you... Jonah's phone buzzes on the nightstand, loud in the quiet room. Both of them glances at it. Evan grabs it and shoves it toward Jonah. Jonah watches him for a second longer, then looks down. His face shifts the moment he answers. Evan watches him pull on his jacket. The door clicks shut behind Jonah. Jonah starts walking as he answers. He listens more than he speaks. His jaw tightens. I understand, he says once, then quieter. Give me a few days. Cold rushes in when he pushes outside. Footsteps crunch across the lot. Nate is heading toward the entrance. They spot each other at the same time. Jonah doesn't slow. Nate barely has time to register Jonah's hand catching his sleeves before the pull comes. The kiss lands fast. Nate stiffens. He breaks it. Jonah freezes, eyes searching his. The old instinct screams in Nate's chest to step back, to protect, to leave first. But Jonah doesn't move away. Nate swallows. Then he leans back in, choosing it. Their mouths meet again, steadier now. Breath clouding between them. Nate's hand tightened in Jonah's jacket, grounding himself in what's real. When they finally separate, Jonah rests his forehead against Nate's. Something inside Nate loosens. The cold presses in. Some stones never make it to the house. They start clean. They carry speed. Then the ice changes. The line drifts. Pressure nudges them just enough to miss what they were meant to reach. Nate has spent years expecting drift, expecting the moment when momentum turns into distance. But tonight, something held. Some lines don't break. Some stones don't drift. Some momentum doesn't end in loss. Sometimes it finds the center. And when it does, everything changes. This is Clean Takeout, Chapter 6, Holding the Line. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share for more stories on gay audiobooks.